In recent weeks, a harrowing tale has emerged from Canada, stirring the international community. It began with the discovery of 215 children's remains in unmarked graves on the grounds of a former residential school in Kamloops, British Columbia. This news was deeply distressing and shocking for many, yet this discovery represented only the initial revelation in what would soon prove to be a far more substantial crisis. In the wake of the Kamloops discovery, further investigations were carried out across Canada, specifically focusing on former residential schools. These institutions, which were primarily run by the Catholic Church, were part of a government program to assimilate Indigenous children into Euro-Canadian society. Regrettably, this assimilation process involved wrenching these children away from their families, their communities, and their cultures in what many have now labeled as a form of cultural genocide. The next site to be investigated was the former Marieval Indian Residential School in Saskatchewan. The Cowessess First Nation initiated a comprehensive search, spearheaded by their chief, Cadmus Delorme. The search yielded horrifying results. 751 unmarked graves were uncovered. These were children who, like those in Kamloops, had been stripped of their identities in death as they were in life, their resting places unmarked and forgotten. The question that arises is why these graves were unmarked. As it transpires, the markers for these graves were reportedly removed by the Roman Catholic Church that administered the cemetery in the 1960s. The details surrounding this act, whether it was a systematic erasure of evidence or something else, remain unclear. This chilling discovery, far from being an isolated incident, is now understood to be part of a larger pattern. As news of the discoveries spread, Canada was prompted to launch nationwide searches at all 139 former residential schools. Radar technology was used to detect disturbances in the ground, revealing the presence of even more unmarked graves. As each new grave was found, the horrifying scale of the atrocity became increasingly apparent. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, speaking on the matter, referred to the residential schools as one of the darkest chapters in Canada's history. He emphasized that understanding the full scale and implications of these discoveries is of paramount importance. After all, these schools were operational for over a century, starting in 1840 and continuing until the late 1990s. Over this period, more than 150,000 Indigenous children were forcibly taken from their families and placed into these institutions where they were expected to renounce their heritage and assimilate into a foreign culture. It's important to note that the Canadian government had formally acknowledged these issues before. In 2008, then Prime Minister Stephen Harper issued a formal apology for the residential school system. Following the apology, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was established to investigate the atrocities and their impacts on the Indigenous peoples. The commission worked for several years, hearing testimonies from more than 6,000 survivors and releasing a 4,000-page report in 2015. The report detailed the tragic experiences of the children, many of whom suffered physical and sexual abuse, malnutrition, and inadequate living conditions. It identified the system as a form of cultural genocide. However, the recent discoveries have shed new light on the extent of the atrocities. The Commission's report had identified approximately 4,100 children who died in these schools, but in light of the recent findings, it's now feared that the true number could be much higher. The unmarked graves, hidden from the world, suggest an attempt to cover up the true extent of the mortality rate within these institutions. The discovery of these gravesites serves as a poignant reminder of a disturbing chapter in Canadian history. As the nation grapples with its past, it is incumbent upon Canadians, and indeed the world, to recognize these atrocities for what they were. This means not only acknowledging the tragedy that unfolded within these residential schools, but also working towards reconciliation with the affected communities. As these investigations continue to unfold, the world is watching. Each new discovery stirs international condemnation, and pressures mount on the Catholic Church and the Canadian government to take further action. Despite the passage of time, these wounds are far from healed, and many are now calling for an independent investigation into these deaths, as well as for the church to release all of its records related to the residential schools. This story is far from over. As the investigations continue and the full scale of this atrocity becomes clearer, the world waits for justice to be served for the victims of this tragedy and for steps to be taken to ensure that such a disaster never happens again. It's a grim reminder of a dark period in Canada's history, a period that for many Indigenous people is all too real and personal. But it's also an opportunity for Canada and the world to learn, to heal, and to work towards reconciliation and justice for the Indigenous communities affected by these events. In conclusion, the grim chapter of residential schools in Canada and the recent revelations about the unmarked graves have shed light on the atrocities faced by Indigenous communities. This serves as a stark reminder of the importance of confronting the harsh realities of our history and making amends for past injustices. As we strive for a more inclusive and equitable world, we must never forget the sacrifices and struggles of those who came before us. Thank you for joining us today on this deep dive into a dark period of history. If you found this video informative, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more insightful content. And don't forget to hit the notification bell to stay updated on our latest releases. We value your thoughts and opinions, so please feel free to leave a comment below. How do you think the international community should respond to these revelations? How can we contribute to the healing and reconciliation process? Remember, history is not just about the past. It's about understanding how the past shapes the present and future. It's our collective responsibility to ensure that such injustices are not repeated. As we sign off, let's pledge to learn, understand, and do better by our global community. Until next time, stay informed, stay curious, and never stop learning.